the Premier and the Youth Justice Minister doesn't fix this problem over the next 12 months, heading into the next state election, I would say every regional MP in North Queensland has got their head in the noose. Happy Fridays, ladies and gentlemen. It's Nick Demetto here, the State Member for Hinchinbrook, but also the Deputy Leader of the KAP. And this morning I'm here to talk to you about the Katters Australian Party RE-KAP, where each week we get to talk to you about what the Katters Australian Party MPs have been up to in the electorate, but also down in Parliament, whether it's Canberra or Brisbane. Now, this week it's been an absolutely brilliant week because just on the weekend we had the Katters Australian Party annual general meeting where we had a number of people turn up all the way from Cloncurry, Mount Isa and even up and down the coast of Queensland to sit down and discuss our policy objectives moving forward, but also listen to the Katter MPs, tell them a little bit about what it's like working in Parliament and the kind of things that the Katters Australian Party are working on for our constituents and our member base. It was a great event held at Jam Corner in Townsville here, and we're looking forward already to planning the next one. Bob Katter's been in Canberra last week and busy as usual. There's been a number of things going on in Parliament, but he made a stirring speech setting the record straight on Hell's Gate Dam. Now, there's been a bit of a murmur down there that Bob Katter's killed off Hell's Gate Dam because it wasn't being built the way he liked. But the reality is, it was a state and federal government that did this. But this does give Bob an opportunity to renegotiate with the current federal government on what the terms and conditions are for the parameters set for the engineering on this project moving forward.
I secured $48 million when I had a bit of a balance of power to draw up an updated engineering plan costings for Hells Gates Dam. The LNP gave this money, my $48 million, to Townsville Enterprise. Now, they drew up not the Hells Gate, but their Hells Gate. And there is one hell of a difference between the Hells Gate, agreed to and designed by Dr. J.C. Bradfield himself, agreed to by Malcolm Fraser, Prime Minister, by Premier Jockey Peterson, by Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, by Premier Peter Beattie and Sir Leo Hilscher, one of the greatest citizens of our worthy nation. That was the Hell's Gate, but they dreamed up a little Lilliputian LNP Hell's Gate. Now, what it does is destroy the dream of the Australian people, which is to irrigate inland outback Australia.
In federal parliament last week, a piece of the legislation moves through the House as industrial relations legislation, and it seeks to do a couple of things: to boost wages and enterprise bargaining ability for workers, limit fixed-term contracts to create job security, and also boost workplace conditions such as for those working in flexible workplaces, and important things for industry. Now, Bob was actually supportive of the legislation that moves through the House, but moved amendments with support of the crossbench, which saw the amendments try to alleviate some of those pressures on small business and people out there in the farming sector. This week, Bob also hit the media and spoke out fearlessly against the upgrades that continue to keep going on for the Coranda Range and the small fixes that the state government and federal government keep doing to this piece of road infrastructure. He believes that this road should be left alone and that new tunnel actually built to go through the range to alleviate the traffic on the Coranda Range right now, but also as a long-term solution to connect Cairns with the west of the Great Divide.
If you've got to have a report to decide what you're going to do on the Coranda Range Road, then get out of government. Rebuild the bridge, which is lunacy, or build a tunnel.
Robbie Katter joined us on the weekend here in Townsville for the annual general meeting for Katters Australian Party, and it was great having the leader in town to give his perspective on where the party is and where we should be heading for the future. It was great to hear from Robbie. But he didn't spend too much time here in Townsville. He was straight back in his little Mooney plane to fly on back to Mount Isa. And he joined Ag Force this week when he was there for their annual general meeting, he got to hear and discuss with local Ag Force and statewide Ag Force members to decide and talk about what their policy direction is for the years ahead, and to see how Katter's Australian Party can dovetail in with some of those things. He also hung around for the Ag Force Industry Forum yesterday, which he got to listen in and get a real understanding on exactly what Katter's Australian Party can do to help the farming sector in Queensland. Now, this time of year, as we're heading towards Christmas time, the first thing that happens that you can almost set your watch to is high school and primary school awards nights. So Robbie Katter's joined the Good Shepherd Catholic College for their graduation in Mount Isa this week, and it's great to get out there and listen to all the kids that are actually here getting some of the awards, but also keep an eye out for some of those future leaders in our community. Robbie Katter in Parliament last week got to deliver a speech which talked about the story of Stumpy Barrett. Stumpy Barrett was a resident that lived in Traeger, and unfortunately, because of waiting for 8 months to see a doctor and going through the telehealth process and still not seeing a doctor, he passed from a heart condition that could have been quickly alleviated by, this is what the coroner's saying, alleviated by just being on the right medication. Stumpy's family is now working with Robbie Katter's office to fight to make sure that those that are seeking medical attention in regional Queensland don't have the same fate as Stumpy Barrett.
And I wanted to use as a case in point, I think this tells a story because we're loaded up with these sort of stories, and I think this goes to the heart of what we deal with regularly. Stumpy Barrett was buried on Friday. His family came to see me on Saturday, obviously very distraught. He was 50 years working for Main Roads in Cloncurry. He fell down on the job in March this year from a heart problem, went to Cloncurry Hospital, presented there. Right, you've got a problem, we'll get you an appointment. So that's March. July, he gets a telehealth appointment to say, crikey, you've got a bit of a problem there, Stumpy Barrett. I'll table these documents. You've got a bit of a problem in July. You need to see a cardiologist. He waited until 4 weeks ago. He died in a car driving from Mount Isa to Cloncurry, pulled over, got his dog out. So he's waited, and he was waiting for a letter from the cardiologist to be able to see a cardiologist, and then I've got the letter from the coroners that shows that the things he suffered from could have most likely been prevented with medication. So that's a person in my electorate. He's presented in March, and by November he still hasn't got to see a cardiologist for a disease, something that could have been prevented if he got access to medication. So you can imagine what the family feels like and what they're like for saying to us. And then when I knock on the door and say, can we get some more dialysis chairs, they say, there's no money. And then we come down here for Parliament looking at the Cross River Rail, talking about the new Gabba Stadium for $2 billion, but there's no money for these health services.
Shane Knuth, after Parliament last week, jumped straight back in his car, drove down from Cairns and right into the Curramine Beach markets. And people always ask, why does Shane Knuth always go to the markets? And it's not for the sweets, I can assure you that. It's to get out there and talk to people in the electorate and really put a finger on the pulse to best understand what's necessary out there and what needs to be brought back into Parliament the following week. And it's a great opportunity for people to sit down and chat with Shane too. He's a very informal person. He loves having a chat and catching up with everyone out there in his electorate. Shane Knuth also delivered a very, very strong speech in Parliament last week, and once again talking about the health system here in Queensland and I guess the lack of services and the failings of our health system from the state Labor government. He's calling on the State Minister to deliver telestroke services for those people living in regional Queensland that just can't get to a specialist appointment in a big city or get into their doctors when they're having problems or have been diagnosed with stroke-like symptoms. This would be a great service, and he also asked a question of the Minister of this.
Mr Speaker.
I call the member for Hill.
Mr Speaker, my question without notice is to the Minister for Health and Ambulance Services. Mr Speaker, over 5,000 Queenslanders will suffer a stroke for the first time this year, with 25% experiencing a stroke in their lifetime. Rural and regional Queenslanders have less access to specialist services, and considering early intervention saves lives and reduces disabilities, will the Minister commit to funding a telestroke service in Queensland?
I call the member for Minister for Health. I acknowledge the views of stakeholders, and I attended the telestroke event recently at Parliament here, that Queensland should deploy a statewide telestroke service. This is currently under consideration as part of the development of a Queensland virtual stroke service.
If there's one thing that Qatar's Australian Party MPs support, that is the coal industry and those people working in the coal industry, anyone exploring for it, anyone digging it up, and anyone supplying jobs in the coal industry. Because just reminding people that the coal mining in Queensland and the royalties that are generated from that, make sure that we've got the money to build our schools, repair our roads, and create the infrastructure for our state to move forward. And Shane Kanouf delivered this message in the strongest possible way in Parliament last week. And if you just watch for a second, you'll check out Shane Kanouf's speech.
It is very refreshing to see the Labor government introducing legislation that seeks to assist the coal mining industry to be allowed to operate more effectively. All Queensland has seen lately is the government's lavish announcements about their Queensland Energy and Job Plan, which pushes a strong anti-coal agenda. Mr Speaker, apparently, according to the plan, by 2035, Queensland will have no regular reliance on coal and be at 80% renewable energy. Yet here we are debating a bill to support the coal mining industry, which seems to be a bit contradiction.
After a long week in Parliament, it was good to deliver a number of speeches in Parliament, everything from marine infrastructure to talking about the Doug Ladner Bridge that was opened recently in Ingham. But it was good to get back to the electorate this week, and it's straight back into community events, getting out there and talking to people and understanding of the things that need fixing. After attending the AGM on Saturday for Qatar's Australian Party, I got straight back up to Ingham, and the first thing I did was get down there to talk to the Ingham Coast Guard. That's QF14, and congratulate them, and also hand on a certificate congratulating them for 50 years of keeping that flotilla up and running. And, you know, this is a community organisation that is backed by volunteers that make sure that every boatie that leaves the Hinchinbrook electorate has a safety blanket or a net that catches them if something goes wrong at sea. So thank you to Rex, the Commodore there, and his team that work tirelessly to make sure we're all safe out there on the water. Just like Robbie Catter and Shane Kanouf, I got into the school awards season this week as well. And, you know, once again, I just think it's brilliant to see these kids get up there and receive awards, especially when you hear about the type of awards, everything from music, academics, sport, working and in vet sort of style students. You know, it just amazes me every day. These are our future tradespeople, our future engineers, but also our future leaders, and it's great to meet these kids. This week I got to go along to the Northern Beaches State High School awards ceremony. That was actually in the morning on Wednesday, and straight up jumped into little grey Hilux and shot up the highway to the Ingham State School Awards ceremony, which was held on Wednesday night. And, you know, everything from meeting the school captains for next year through to some of the award recipients. I just love these things. This week in the Hinchinbrook electorate, the Hinchinbrook Shire Council met with their local disaster management group, and it was great to hear from everyone from SES to QPS, Fire and Emergency Services, on exactly how we're preparing locally for the flood and disaster season. Hopefully we got our fingers crossed. We don't see a cyclone this year, but monsoonal rains are expected and heavy rain. So it's great to know that we're prepared. And my message to everyone is make sure you've got a disaster ready kit, whether it's for floods, cyclones, up and down the Hinchinbrook electorate. Just want to make sure people are prepared and have all the right information heading into this disaster season. On the topic of youth crime, now, this is something that hasn't just popped up. For the last 5 years, as long as I've been a member of Parliament, youth crime has been steadily increasing, and we've seen the State Government commission a number of reports. Now, Bob Atkinson dropped his latest report back in March this year. So 8 months ago this happened. Finally, the State Government, after presiding over this for such a long time, have decided to release this on a Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Ridiculous. And as we've gone through this document, you know, there's a number of alarming statistics and things that you can pull out. So we've got 10% more young offenders committing crime while on bail. It was only a couple of years ago Bob Atkinson did his last report, so that's alarming. We're not going backwards here, ladies and gentlemen. And people out there that are getting their cars stolen and houses broken into can confirm that. 29% more young offenders committing serious offences while out on bail. This means one thing. The children out there aren't deterred by the current laws and legislation, and they're getting more violent, they're getting more brazen. A state government problem that they should be taken heed of very, very seriously. Now, 30% more young offenders are committing an offence leading to death or harm while on bail. These kids should not be on bail. These kids should be locked up and be put through programs that ensure that we're actually having a chance to turn around some of these recidivist young offenders. Cleveland Bay Detention Centre, 95% of all children going through that current system right now, which is broken, are committing a crime within the first 12 months after release. You can understand why the state government sat on this for so long. We'll be making sure that we're going into Parliament in the next sitting week with a lot of the ammunition that this report actually hands us, and we'll be making sure we're holding the state government to account, because if they don't fix this problem, if the Premier and the Youth Justice Minister doesn't fix this problem over the next 12 months, heading into the next state election, I would say every regional MP in North Queensland has got their head in the noose. That's the Katters Australian Party recap for this Friday. It's been great to have you tune in and listening to what the Katters MPs have been up to. My name's Nick DeMetto, the State Member for Hinchinbrook. I wish you all a great weekend and a happy Friday. Cheers.